Just to clarify the rule on argumentative questions, I do allow a cross-examination on the facts of the case, and I do allow cross-examination about lying about the facts of the case, including the motive to lie and implications of testimony with regard to impeachment. I do not allow questions that only go to the people's own argument, and I will sustain any objections to that. As far as improper hypotheticals, what's required of a lay opinion is personal knowledge rationally based on the perception of witnesses with an opinion that's helpful to the jury to understand the evidence. That's People versus McAlpin, 53 Cal 3rd, 1289, 1306. But that would also include evidence of motive and witness credibility. Cope versus Davidson, that's a 1947 case. It's a civil case, but the principle is that a wide range of proof must be available to prove motive and intent. 30 Cal 2nd, 193 at 200. Thank you.
Your Honor, and just on that issue, just very, very quickly, because I have never said it. The reason and why I am asking the hypotheticals is that, in essence, the evidence has been presented. The evidence, the hypotheticals I'm asking are based on the evidence. The reason I have to ask them is that no matter what the evidence is, Mr. Durst is denying the actual underlying information. So what I have to then do is I can say, okay, I know that you are denying that you killed Susan, but would you agree that if the evidence demonstrates that and you're sending her money, blah, blah, blah. So in other words, they are directly, they're not argument. What they are doing is they are forcing the defendant to answer a question.
You want to make sure you don't need to explain that. It's just that there is a limit to that. Right. And are you telling this jury type question no good?
Okay.
His personal calculation may be appropriate, but then the ultimate argument to the jury, don't you agree that I'm right and you're guilty kind of argument is not ever going to work.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
That's all. Anything else? Then we'll have a formal opening for the jurors. Please be seated, everyone. Good morning.
Do you want me to try to turn it on again, Your Honor? That first one didn't go too well.
Please don't.
Okay.
Yeah, there are dogs circling the building.
Reminds me of the Patti Smith concert at the Santa Monica Civic in '78. I had permanent hearing loss as a result of that. It was worth it. She was great. Anyway,
Deputy.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, I've had extensive discussions with the lawyers about our
blocking my view
schedule.
Why don't you move the microphone?
Tape. You good? So I've established how long the cross-examination will continue of this witness, and I do know what the other evidence will be. And I expect we will conclude the evidence on Wednesday, the 1st of September, and that argument will commence on the 8th of September. We will, sometime on the week of the 13th of September, you will get the evidence. I'm not sure exactly what day, but you will get it during that week, and we'll be able to begin deliberations. So that's juror number 12. I know you have a trip. I know you're going to go on it. You need to do that. So, but know that you will start sometime during that week to do your deliberation, and I will not tell you, no judge will ever tell you how long you should deliberate. That's entirely up to you to decide what you need to do to resolve the case. All right? So,
You know, with respect to deliberations,
yes.
In the event that there is no verdict, will you be substituting another juror, or will you be a juror?
You're way ahead of the game. You're way ahead of the game.
I
So,
was thinking
Yeah, we will follow the standard procedures, all right? So, but you'll have an opportunity to deliberate during that week, and we'll see how we're doing, okay? With that, I'll note Mr. Durst is present, and his lawyers are here, Mr. DeGuerin and Mr. Chasnoff. You may turn that on. Mr. Lewin is here for the people, with Mr. Bailey and Mr. Henderson and Mr. Miata. You may resume your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, you testified that in total, maybe it was the day before, that you had given Susan Berman approximately $275,000. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
You also testified yesterday when I was questioning you about your selling of a half a pound of pot to the person up in Humboldt, or a quarter of a pound, whatever it was. Do you remember being asked about why you wouldn't just give him the marijuana and why you would sell it to him? Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you, in essence, responded that if it was one joint, you would give it to him, but any more than that, he had to buy it, correct?
Yeah, somebody wanted a quarter of a pound. I would feel I was being taken advantage of if I gave it to him.
So, would you agree that if a close friend of yours, who you've given a large amount of money to over the years, you become aware 5 years before they die that they are out there falsely stating that you confessed to killing your wife to them and that they cooperated in falsifying an alibi, wouldn't you believe that that person would be really taking advantage of your generosity?
Well, that person is Susan Berman, and I valued her friendship, and she did what she did.
So you're saying, Mr. Durst, that in essence you made the decision that even though she was falsely claiming that you had killed your wife to numerous people and you were aware of it, you decided that you were not only going to remain friends with her, but you were going to continue to give her large sums of money.
Correct.
Would you agree that given your other statements about how you give money to individuals that you know, that that would be different than anybody else in your life? The way you handled her?
I'm trying to think of somebody who was doing me wrong, who I continued to stay friends with. I guess Debbie Charitan used to say things about me that I did not like. And not only did I stay friends with her, but I married her.
But your wife, Debbie, in many ways, Mr. Durst, has been extremely supportive of you, correct?
Correct.
And your wife, Debbie, never was out there saying that you had falsely stating that you had murdered your wife, correct?
No, but Debbie always seemed to like to brag about what she knew about Robert Durst that nobody else knew.
So, Mr. Durst, the other area that I wanted to ask you about is you had made the comment, and you have said that you fled to Galveston because you were concerned, scared, that Janine Pirro was going to charge you with Kathy's murder, correct?
That is correct.
And you also said that you were concerned that Janine Pirro was going to charge you even though you were innocent because she wanted to make a career for herself, correct?
Correct.
And you've also said that you were aware at that time that Susan Berman had been out there for at least 5 years telling people that you had murdered your wife and that she had provided an alibi, correct?
Correct.
And you were further aware that Susan Berman was known to be your best friend, correct?
Known I have difficulty with, but all right, she was my best friend.
Well, I mean, people knew, in other words, people who knew you and knew her, that if they had been asked, hey, who's Bob Durst's best friend? They might name Nick, they might name Susan, but she's going to be one of the people they're going to name, correct?
Correct.
And going the other way, you also would agree that you were known as one of Susan's, if not her closest friends, correct?
Correct.
So, Mr. Durst, weren't you concerned? I want you to assume for a second, you'll like this hypothetical. I want you to assume for a second that you did not kill your wife, Kathy.
I have no problem assuming that I did not kill my wife, Kathy. And I did not kill my wife, Kathy.
Okay, so I want you to assume for a moment you did not kill your wife, Kathy. Even if that were true, wouldn't you agree that the fact that your best friend is out there telling numerous people that you killed Kathy and that she helped cover it up would have represented a threat, especially when the prosecutor is out there trying to make a career for herself, that Susan would have represented a threat to you whether or not what she was saying was true?
Susan could not subpoena me. I don't see what you mean, a threat.
Let me explain. So, if Susan Berman is out there and she's telling people, as you've said, that you killed your wife, you told her that, and that she helped you cover it up, if Janine Pirro is looking to charge you, if Janine Pirro talks to Susan Berman, then that's going to mean that Janine Pirro can basically say, I've got Bob Durst's best friend who's been out there for years saying he killed his wife and helped cover it up. Would you agree that even if Susan's statement is untrue, just her going around and saying it and you being aware of it is a tremendous threat to you?
I think that if Susan was formally interviewed, the person doing the interviewing would decide that she's not reliable.
You would agree, though, Mr. Durst, that if you've got a DA that you've said is out there trying to charge you with something to advance her career, then wouldn't you agree it might not matter whether Susan is actually credible? The DA might just decide, I got all this circumstantial evidence plus his best friend, I'm going to charge him.
Objection, speculative and argument.
Overruled.
I think if Janine Pirro interviewed Susan Berman, she would conclude that Susan Berman did not know what she was talking about and would not make a good witness.
You would agree, Mr. Durst, that within a couple of weeks before Susan Berman was murdered, she told you that she had been contacted by the New York authorities, correct?
I don't remember her saying New York. She was contacted by someone. I don't think she said it was New York. She just said it was an investigator.
You would agree, though, she told you she had been contacted by investigators,
Correct.
police officers, who wanted to speak to her about Kathy's disappearance, correct?
I'm going to return to what I said. What she said was an investigator.
Okay. And what did you take that to mean?
What did I think that meant that day in 2000? She brought that up in the middle of a long telephone conversation when we discussed a whole bunch of other things. I don't think I took her seriously.
Well, isn't it true, Mr. Durst, that during that phone call, the way that it ended, and you told Jarecki and Smerling this, is that she said, I'm going to talk to him, and your attitude was okay, correct?
Well, you see, I just don't remember what she said other than I was contacted by an investigator.
One moment. One moment. Let me know when you're ready. While they're finding the clip, Mr. Durst, I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to move on to something else here. Just let me know when you're ready.
Yes,
Habib. Would you agree that Susan was a paranoid person in terms of her security?
Sure.
And you would also agree that Susan would never have opened the door to her home for a stranger, correct?
She would open the door if there was a delivery person there.
Would you agree that of the people that you know, that Susan was one of the most security conscious people that you knew? Even up to paranoid?
Susan was conscious of security.
You also, I want to, are you ready, Habib, or no?
Ready? Yeah.
Okay.
Tim's ready. I'm not ready. Tim's ready. This is going to be from People's 269 on the transcript. It's 269A, page 93.
Yes.
This is the 2010 interviews with Andrew Griffin.
Do you need volume on here, on this? I'm gonna find out.
But you heard from her that she had been contacted by the police?
Yeah.
What did she say, if you remember?
He said, the Los Angeles police contacted me, they want to talk to me about Susie Berman. I think I and you are going to be best off if I just talk to them.
She said they want to talk to me about Susie Berman.
I'm sorry, Susie Berman said the police are contacting, Los Angeles police are contacting me. They want to talk to me about your Kathy Durst's disappearance. And this was probably before the PR guy told me that the newspapers are doing these articles.
Does that refresh your memories? Does that refresh your memory, Mr. Durst?
Well, it says Susan said it was the Los Angeles police.
Right, but the point is, whether it was the Los Angeles police or the New York police, that the police wanted to talk to Susan about Kathy's disappearance, correct? That's what she told you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
We have a second clip. This is from the 2015 interview
With you.
with me. Tim?
Yes, this is going to be People's 291. On 291A, the transcript, page 7.
Susan told you that the police had contacted her, remember? And she told you, do you remember, who did she tell you contacted her? When you told us Martha Andrews.
Susan told me that she'd been contacted by Los Angeles detectives and New York detectives, and they want to come talk to me.
And if I asked you on a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being I'm not sure she said it, and 100 being I'm positive, you would say
Said what?
that Susan told you that.
Yeah,
Tanya, right?
Susan definitely told me that she's been contacted by.
Do you remember that, Mr. Durst?
Yes, and I think you just proved that my memory between 2010 and 2015 about what happened in 1982 is a problem.
Motion to strike as non-responsive, Your Honor. Mr. Durst, in these two clips, you were admitting, you were saying that Susan told you, and this is, you agree, this is near the time of her death, correct?
No, one was in 2010 when I spoke to Jarecki, and one was in 2015 when I spoke to you.
No. I
And she
don't,
died in 2000.
no, I don't mean when did you make the statement. I mean your conversation with Susan, where she said to you that New York and LA police want to come talk to her. That was near the time of her death. Obviously before she was killed, or she couldn't have told you, correct?
That was near the time of her death. So she died in 2000, and we're talking about something that happened in 2000? I thought we were talking about what I said in 2010 and 2015.
Mr. Is it your testimony that you don't understand what I'm asking you right now? Is that your testimony?
Why don't you just ask it again?
Okay. You had a conversation with Susan where she said to you, the New York and LA police want to talk to me about Kathy's disappearance, correct?
All I remember was Susan saying an investigator wants to contact me. I don't remember her saying that it was New York or that it was Los Angeles.
So you agree that in the clip I just played for you in 2015, you were very clear that it was Los Angeles and New York detectives. That's what you said, correct?
Yes, that's what I said to you.
Okay, so the next question is, you would agree that when Susan made that statement to you, when you had the conversation with her, that was very near the time, but obviously before she was murdered, correct?
Well, I don't remember when she made the statement. For all I remember, the statement could have been made a year before she died.
Would you agree, Mr. Durst, that the statement has to have been made to you after the reinvestigation begun, correct?
I could only say, I guess. I don't see why it would have to come after the reinvestigation was made public.
No, that's not what I said, that it was made public. You would agree that if the New York and LA police want to talk to Susan about Kathy's disappearance, that would only make sense if they were actually reinvestigating Kathy's disappearance, correct?
I never thought they stopped the first investigation. That was all Janine Pirro saying that she's renewing the investigation. I thought there was always an investigation.
Mr. Durst, are you aware of people being interviewed about this case between 1983 and 1999?
Yes, Nick Scarpetta repeatedly told me things that were quote-unquote happening.
When did you stop your contact with Nick Scarpetta?
probably around 1985, 1986.
So you would agree then, between 1986 and 1999, you would agree, Mr. Durst, that you are unaware of any investigation being done in this case, correct?
I have a lot of difficulty agreeing to that. I might have been aware of something or other.
Well, if I ask you right now, what are you aware of? Can you point to anything today?
I would point at the McCormack family's wrongful death lawsuits.
Mr. Durst, didn't those wrongful death lawsuits start after you were charged in 2015?
No, the McCormack family took me to court in February of 1983 for the first time, and I've been in court with them right up to right now.
All right, Mr. Durst, I'm gonna go away from that. I'm gonna go back to the area that I was inquiring about. You would agree that Susan, in the conversation you had with her, made clear that she was going to speak to those investigators, correct?
Susan talked about talking to the investigator.
And Mr. Durst, isn't it true that once she said to you she was going to talk to the investigators, given what you have described and agreed to as her big mouth, you were concerned that whether it was true or not, she was going to say to them what she'd been telling numerous friends, that you had killed your wife and that she had created an alibi, correct?
What she told her numerous friends was all different. Each of her friends had a different story about what Susan had said.
Well, you would agree, Mr. Durst, none of the stories that she told her friends, the difference is they all involved, to some degree, either Susan saying you had killed your wife, Susan discussing a friend of hers whose wife was missing, and then different versions of Susan helping to create an alibi for that friend, correct?
Objection, Legness.
What?
Overruled. I'll allow it.
I think you've covered most of them. Most of the people who testified said Susan said something to the effect of, I'm a mobster's daughter and I stick up for my friends no matter what they do. And I gave Bobby Durst an alibi that was not true. I don't think most people reported that she said Bobby Durst killed Kathy Durst.
You would agree that several people, Mr. Durst, including Nick Chabon, who said that Susan Berman told him that you had killed your wife, that...
Several of them said I had killed my wife.
And several of them said, correct, that Susan had said to them that she had provided an alibi by calling Albert Einstein or the medical school, correct?
Correct.
Well, Mr. Durst, weren't you concerned then that Susan Berman was going to repeat that allegation to these investigators, and that with Janine Pirro looking to get her ticket to the Attorney General's office in New York, that you'd be charged with murder?
No, I did not. I might be charged with murder by Janine Pirro, but I don't think Susan would have had whatever Susan said had anything to do with it, because if Janine Pirro had an investigator actually interview Susan, he would conclude that Susan's full of shit.
Well, Mr. Durst, given your response, though, haven't you basically just testified that given what you have basically described as Janine Pirro's naked ambition, that it wouldn't really matter whether Susan was, quote, full of shit,
you would be up shit's creek because your situation would be that your best friend is telling investigators you murdered your wife and she covered it up,
Back
correct?
to following the question.
I'll sustain it. It's a poetic in an ugly way, but just because a witness said that doesn't mean that
All right,
you may.
I'll rephrase. Whether or not, Mr. Durst, Susan is full of the word that you described, her telling an unethical prosecutor, as you have maintained, could certainly still have the result of getting you indicted for murder, correct?
No, I just answered that question. Susan was never interviewed by any authority, and I think if she was, that authority would not find her credible.
Well, Mr. Durst, you would agree that Susan was not interviewed by any authority in this case because she got murdered before she could talk to them, correct?
That's argumentative.
I have no knowledge that any authority contacted Susan Berman.
In fact, Mr. Durst, during the interview that I had with you in New Orleans, you would agree that there was a point when I said to you, hey, Bob, you know, the police never contacted her. Do you remember me telling you that? I can play the clip.
Yes.
And do you remember, Mr. Durst, your response was to be very surprised and for me to say to you, in essence, hey, Bob, you didn't know that, did you? And for you to respond, no, I did not, correct?
I did not know what she was saying was untrue, but my familiarity with Susan Berman led me to believe that almost anything she told me could be untrue.
Well, Mr. Durst, but again, if you can answer this question, whether what Susan was saying was true or untrue, the fact that she was going to be saying it to investigators, will you at least concede this? That was not a positive thing for you, correct?
It was not a positive thing for me.
And would you also agree, Mr. Durst, that her being murdered shortly thereafter is at the very least an unlucky coincidence for you?
Argumentative.
Sustained.
You want me to? Oops.
Okay. I want to go back, Mr. Durst, to your testimony that you believed that the killer was still in the house when you were there, correct?
The killer might have been in the house when I was there, yes.
Well, you previously testified that you believed the killer was in the house, correct?
I think I testified that I believed he might be in the house.
You agree it was a very small two-bedroom house, correct?
Yes.
And we've now established, you now agree, you've testified that Susan's body, her face was cold.
You have testified that Susan's body was basically cold. What I testified to was that I put my hand over her nose and her mouth, and it felt cold.
Well, if we want to talk about what you testified, Mr. Durst, you first testified that you put your hand over her mouth, and the first thing you said was her breath was cold, correct?
Objects, misstates the testimony.
Overruled.
That's what you said, correct?
If that's what I said, that's what I said. I don't remember. I said her breath was cold.
And you would agree that her breath could not have been cold if she was dead, correct? Is that correct?
Her breath could not be cold if she was dead.
And,
I don't know. I'm not a... I just don't know.
Mr. Durst, you said you're not a highly intelligent man, but you said you're an intelligent person. Is it your testimony that you don't know whether or not Susan Berman being dead, you're not sure whether or not she could be breathing cold air that you would have felt? You don't know that answer.
I think you're asking me details of something that I'd never experienced. I put my hand over her face and it felt cold, and whether I thought it was her breath or her face that was cold, I really don't know. And if I said it was one or the other, I was just speaking my mind.
I want to go back, Mr. You just said you're asking about something I never experienced. Do you recall saying that 10 seconds ago?
Yes,
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that the whole basis of your testimony, the whole basis of your statement of, I felt her cold breath, is that you are saying you did experience that? That was the point of your testimony, correct?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
I think when I said breath, I was misspeaking.
Well, Mr. Durst, when you just said you're asking about something I've never experienced, isn't it true that you said that, Mr. Durst, because in a slip of the tongue, you were admitting with that statement that, Mr. Lewin, you're asking me about things that did not actually happen, and that's why I'm making mistakes when I describe them. Isn't that what you meant?
Overruled.
I have no idea what you just testified to.
Well, I'm not testifying anything, I'm asking a question, but I'll ask it again. The statement that you just made a moment ago, which was relating to the fact that you don't have any experience with that. You know, I'm going to actually ask that I apologize, can the question be read back, my first question? I apologize.
Please read that back.
Mr. Durst, isn't it true that the whole basis of your testimony, the whole basis of your statement of I felt her cold breath, is that you are saying you did experience that? That was the point of your testimony, correct?
I don't know why I used the word, I don't know why I put the word breath into what I said.
Well, the other question I have, Mr. Durst, is why did you say you're asking me about something that I did not experience? That's what you said a few moments ago.
Yeah, well, I put my hand over Susan's mouth and nose to see if I could feel her breath. And I felt a coldness.
Mr. Durst, let me ask this question again. That's not what I'm asking you. A moment ago, when you were explaining why you made the misstatement you say about her cold breath, you said, quote, you're asking me about something I did not experience.
Objection 352
Overruled.
and 765.
Pardon me? Overruled.
Why would you say, Mr. Durst, when you are testifying literally about the observations you made, things you experienced when you found your best friend dead, would you say, Mr. Lewin, you're asking me details about something I did not experience? Can you explain that?
Your Honor,
That may mischaracterize.
you said before.
Overruled.
I don't know why I said you're asking me about something I have never experienced. But what I'm thinking about is when I used to go skiing, my breath would get cold.
Well, when you were skiing, you were alive, correct?
Very much so.
But again, Mr. Durst, isn't it true that what happened is as you were answering my question, you realized that you were describing something that did not happen, and what came out of your mouth was, you're asking about something, Mr. Lewin, that I did not experience, because in fact, Mr. Durst, I was asking you about something you did not experience because the event didn't happen. Isn't that correct?
Objection, argument.
Overruled.
The event happened.
Mr. Durst, if you simply tell me you're not going to answer the question, I won't ask it again.
Well, the question takes 6 lines on my tablet. I think you're asking me if I put my hand over Susan's mouth and nose, did I feel her breath?
No, that's not what I'm asking you. Listen to my question.
Well, then why don't you ask it again?
Okay, listen to my question. This is not a question about the breath at all. This is a question about why you would have responded. You're asking me about, in essence, an experience that I did not have. That's in essence what you said, correct?
Mischaracterize it, leaves out the word before.
Overruled.
I don't think that's what I said.
Okay, 1 second. I'm going to ask either for the court's assistance or for the court reporter to read it back. I don't want to paraphrase what Mr. Durst said. So what I'm looking for is the original answer.
Yeah.
Or the original answer
I'm sorry.
about what you experienced.
Right. Well, no. The original answer was, you're asking me about something I didn't experience, something like that.
Is that the statement?
Well, let me find it exactly as you ask.
I think that is it.
Camilla, can you, I don't know if you found it. Let's see. I have to go back a bit.
Yes, I've got it, Your Honor.
Well, we're having a readback, John, so don't tell me I can deal with it.
Okay, let's
I have my question.
sidebar for a second.
Well,
Just snap the picture.
right here.
Now, the federal court has more money, and so everybody gets this transcript. So the lawyers have it, and I don't know if the jurors have it. I don't think the jurors don't, but all the participants do, so we're all literally on the same page. I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I got it. It really helps me. Judge Gutierrez gave me a tour of his federal courtroom when he was first appointed, and I was just so jealous. I saw all this great stuff they had.
You know the cases they get, you know the cases they do, Your Honor. You would not be that jealous.
Good point.
Thanks, Your Honor.
Okay,
May I continue, Your Honor?
wait till,
What was that?
oh,
Just share it or something, John.
Yeah. Boy, my diary.
Oh, you're done.
yes, yeah, I want to picture that too, that's
Yeah,
good.
Oh, it's the same, okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right,
May I continue, Your Honor?
hope it's worth it. Okay, go ahead.
Always waiting.
When come in, sir? Hmm? Oh, yeah, yeah.
I may need to reboot, Your Honor.
After all that, okay.
Anybody else need this, or?
Do I need to, will I need to restart?
Yeah, you may need to restart.
Okay.
It's me.
But don't wait for me. As soon as you're ready, I'll catch up with you.
Still getting an error. Can we take a break?
Yeah. All right, we'll take a break now so we don't waste any of your time. Do not converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with this case. Do not form or express any opinion on the case. 10:25 will return.